A controversial children's book teaching graphic sex acts, complete with illustrations, making the rounds in school libraries and classrooms across the country, leaving parents and communities outraged.
This sexual education book includes some graphic illustrations.
I come to you today to discuss a book that I found in our school district. It's called It's Perfectly Normal.
I'm here today to talk about this book here. It's called It's Perfectly Normal for students 10 and up.
I just think it's not right for young kids.
It talks about puberty, sexual health, and gender identity.
What I have in my hand is pornography.
This book details all kinds of sexual images.
It doesn't promote abstinence. It promotes masturbation. It promotes same-sex relationships.
They are coming after our children.
As a parent, as a taxpayer, I demand this to be removed immediately.
If you don't want to hear it in a school board meeting, why should children be able to check it out of the school system?
So this is It's Perfectly Normal. This book is a sex education book for kids, and it's been pretty controversial. There have been a lot of people who have tried to ban it. There was a really big part of me that wanted to see whether or not there was any truth to the claim that this book was inappropriate for children. So a couple months ago, when I was on Twitter, I saw this clip from a pastor.
This book here, it's called It's Perfectly Normal. I'll read some of this for you. It says, after a bit, a person's becomes moist and slippery, and the clitoris becomes hard. After a bit, a person's becomes erect, stiff, and larger. Sometimes a bit of clear fluid that may contain a few sperm comes out of the tip of the and makes it wet.
Can we, sir, I'm sorry.
Was it something I said? If you don't want to hear it in a school board meeting, why should children be able to check it out of the school system? We have perverts that are perverting our kids. And you all sit back smug in your chairs, but you don't want me to read it. Why? Does it bother you? Yes or no? You can't answer that question. You want to know why? Because politically speaking, you can't say that it's wrong. And you don't want me to read the filth because it exposes the truth. How dare you tell me to stop reading it? If you don't want to hear it, why should the children have to see it?
Pastor, your time is up. Thank you.
That makes two of us.
Now, I'll be completely honest. When I first saw the clip from this angry father who is also a pastor, there was a part of me that really understood where he was coming from. I think I immediately thought, these things in this book do indeed seem like they might not be appropriate. I've made a lot of content about being sex positive, and a lot of that content has referenced my experience with sexual violence that I experienced as a minor. And especially when we talk about my experience, which was grooming, we talk about what sex education looks like for children, because quite frequently what happens in grooming is that a child is alienated from the adults in their life, and this person is able to, in so many ways, take advantage of the ignorance that they have around sex. And so sex education for kids is something that people are talking about when it comes to preventing situations like that happening in the future. But I guess there's a really big part of me that struggles with understanding exactly what sex education looks like for kids and whether or not it's appropriate. This book has been very controversial, and several people have attempted to ban the book from schools. And so I wanted to look through the book and see how I felt about it, see if there was something to the idea that this book, this sex education book for children, is inappropriate. All right, let's read the introduction, okay? So it starts out like this. Sometime between the ages of 8 or 9 and 15 or so, kids' bodies begin to change and grow into adult bodies. Most kids wonder about and have a lot of questions about what will be happening to them as their bodies change and grow during this time. It's perfectly normal for kids curious about and want to know about their changing and growing bodies. Most of the changes, but not all, that take place during this time make it possible for humans to make a baby and give birth to a baby. And making a baby has a lot to do with sex. Sex is about a lot of things: bodies, growing up, families, babies, love, caring, curiosity, feelings, respect, responsibility, biology, and health. There are times when sickness and danger can be part of sex too. Most kids wonder about and have lots of questions about sex. You may wonder why it's a good idea to learn some facts about bodies, about growing up, about sex, about sexual health, and about gender. It's important because these facts can help you stay healthy, take good care of yourself, and make good decisions about yourself as you are growing up and for the rest of your life. Besides, learning about these things can be fascinating and fun. So that gives you a good idea of what this book is supposed to be about. And it's got a couple of other chapters. And when I flipped through the page, I immediately opened up on, I think, the page where people are really upset about. So in the picture that I'm looking at right now, there is a depiction of a man and woman in bed, 2 women in bed, and 2 men in bed. And I know that for these people, this is the issue they have, that these people are included in the book and are being referenced. I want to say that might even be like the worst, the thing they're probably the most upset about. So I'm going to skip forward in this book and read this particular page that they're upset about. And it's called Making Love, Sexual Intercourse. The dictionary tells us one more thing about sex. It says sexual intercourse. Sex can mean sexual intercourse. Some people call sexual intercourse having sex. Most often, sexual intercourse happens when 2 people feel very sexy and very attracted to each other, and may also have very loving and romantic feelings about each other. These feelings often make them want to or decide to be very close to each other in a sexual way. People can have these feelings for people of different genders, or for people of the same gender, or for all of the genders. Love that inclusion. One kind of sexual intercourse happens when a person with a female body and a person with a male body are so close to each other that the penis goes inside the vagina and the vagina stretches in a way that fits around the penis. This kind of touching can make the whole body feel good, feel sexy. And when this kind of sexual intercourse happens, it's possible for a female body and a male body, once their reproductive organs have grown up, to make a baby. So they're being very inclusive of various different types of people, but keeping the language as neutral as possible, female body, male body, right? And they are not explicitly censoring heterosexual relationships. In fact, I think maybe some people might even be able to look at this page and see, oh, there's 2 gay couples, but only 1 straight couple. So what does that say? Most people don't have sexual intercourse only when they want to have a baby. Most often people have sexual intercourse because it feels good. People have sexual intercourse well into old age. These are all things that I feel like if I knew this when I was a kid, it would fill in so many blanks. It would probably have made a lot of things clearer to me, honestly. When a couple has sexual intercourse and does not want to make a baby, there are healthy ways called birth control that can keep them from making a baby or from passing on an infection to one another. So obviously conservatives who hate birth control are going to hate the fact that's being discussed. And it's interesting. So far, this is just talking about what your options are and what can be, right? And what the nature of things is. None of it is saying you should do this and need to do this right now as a kid. It's more so saying, you're probably wondering what this sex thing is. Let me explain it to you in the most polite way. A polite way, but a way where I'm not going to deny what's what, right? When a couple has sexual intercourse and does not want to make a baby, sometimes a couple does not plan ahead or decide whether or not to have sexual intercourse. Planning ahead is most often the effective way to keep a pregnancy from beginning. People also call sexual intercourse making love or lovemaking because it's a way of expressing love. But sexual intercourse is only one way of expressing love. Another kind of sexual intercourse happens when the sexual parts of two people who have female bodies touch, or when the sexual parts of two people who have male bodies touch. This kind of touching can make the whole body feel good, feel sexy. Since male bodies have only sperm cells and no egg cells, and since female bodies have only egg cells and no sperm cells, the beginning cells of a baby cannot start to grow, and a pregnancy cannot begin when two people of the same sex have sexual intercourse. These are things that are, again, obvious to me, but as a kid, you'd be like, what? Well, can he make me pregnant? If this is sex and we're having sex, can he? Anyway. Hugging, cuddling, holding hands, kissing, and touching are other ways of expressing love. So is just being with someone you like a lot and telling the person, I love you. God, understanding sex as something that people who are in love do. Anyway, would have been big. There are some things about sex and sexual intercourse that are important to know and remember. It makes sense to wait to have sexual intercourse until you are old enough and responsible enough to make healthy decisions about sex. Says it right there. One of the things that's hard for me to get out of my mind is while we're having all these conversations about banning books, banning sex ed, making sure that kids aren't looking at certain things in their schools, there's also a conversation happening in tandem where many conservatives are trying to make it so that the age of consent is lowered. And in a lot of places, the reason why that is because there are certain religious marriages that happen when children are technically minors. And more often than not, the situation is a little girl getting married to an older man.
I've heard you talk about parents' rights to raise their kids how they want. In fact, I just double checked. You voted no on making it illegal for kids to be married to adults at the age of 12. If their parents consented to it. You said actually that should be the law because it's the parents' right and the kid's right to decide what's best for them to be raped by an adult. Okay?
Do you know any kids who have been
With
married
marriage.
at age 12?
That was the law.
Do you know any
You voted
kids-
not to change it.
Do you know any kids who have been married at age 12?
I don't need to.
I do. And guess what? They're still married.
Gentlemen.
And it's interesting to me to think about wanting to keep sex ed away from the young girls who would be married to these men. Like, understanding how your body functions to me is very different than having sex, right? Understanding what a natural, normal response to sexual arousal is and how sex actually happens is different than actually encouraging children to have it. And I think that we have this idea that talking about this with kids would encourage them to do it, but we don't really see that. We see in areas where abstinence is the only sex ed that somebody receives that teenage pregnancy rates are quite high. And to me, that sort of proves that not having these conversations doesn't stop these people from having sex. Every person, no matter their gender or how young or old they are, has a right to say no to any kind of touching, even when the person is older or a lot older or stronger or a lot stronger than the other person. Oh my God. Sorry, I got emotional for a second because this is one of those things that it seems obvious to a lot of people, but I remember thinking I could never say no. This book actually had stated very clearly some things that were really, really complicated for me to understand, right? So I've spoken in the past about my experience with sexual violence. I was somebody who dealt with my family sort of rejecting me, and I ran away to LA all the time, and I met a man who would ultimately groom me. And back then, I know that I had some understanding of what sex was in terms of something that someone wanted from me, but I didn't really understand it as something for myself. And, you know, the way that this worked was this guy provided a idyllic environment for who I was back then. And in his space, I felt safe. I felt accepted. I felt loved. And I felt like if he wanted to do certain things to me, that that was simply the price of me feeling that way at the time. That it's a really messed up thing to think about right now in my life, but it's what I can see so clearly now, looking back. And I didn't understand at the time that sex could be some other way, that sex did not need to be this thing I gave people because they wanted. The idea of saying no to sex was something that I really struggled with for a really long time, just based on how sex was introduced to me personally. A relationship that includes sexual contact often comes with exciting and good feelings, but sometimes it may come with complicated feelings. After sexual intercourse that involves the vagina and the penis, a pregnancy can begin. But there are many ways a person can protect oneself from becoming pregnant and from having a baby. During sexual intercourse, serious infections such as HPV, a virus that can cause some kinds of cancer, and HIV, the virus that causes AIDS, as well as other infections that are serious and others that are less serious, can be passed from one person to another. Some are very hard to cure and others very easy to cure. However, there are ways in which people can help protect themselves from getting or from passing infections. Not every person will want to or choose to have sexual intercourse. Some may be interested when they are older. Others may never be interested. Oh my God, this is overtly speaking about asexuality. That is awesome. That is so great. Sex is a lot of things, even feelings and thoughts. Sex is the desire to be very close to someone. Sex is touching the sexual parts of the body. Sex is intercourse. Sex is making babies. Sex is the label most babies are given at birth depending on which sexual parts they are born with. Female parts or male parts, or a mixture of male or female parts. So it's literally also talking about intersexuality. Oh my God. It's so interesting. It's such a brief read, but it packs a punch. Sometimes people use the word sexuality to talk about sex. When people use the word sexuality, they're usually talking about everything in our daily lives that make us sexual human beings. Our gender, our sexual feelings, thoughts, and desires, as well as any sexual contact from sexual touching or sexual intercourse. Y'all, okay, no, I'm not even joking. This is like the second children's book I've purchased this year. This may become one of my favorite books. I could really keep going because there's lots of stuff in here. There's a whole section about abortion. I did do a little bit of research about what sex educators are actually saying about this book. And one of the things that I did hear is that they suggest this book for junior high and high school, really. Probably not lower than that. But I think if you are a parent, it's definitely a book that you can read with your kids. I think it's probably one of the better ways to, in a very concise way, go over a lot of different topics. I'm actually pretty happy about this book. I thought that this would be one of those things where I bought the book and I looked at it for a couple of days and I left it alone. But actually, this has a lot of really great, easy to understand information. And you know what? Reading the bit that I've read, who knows what the rest of the book says, but reading the little bit that I've read, I feel like what it's doing more than anything is telling you what is, giving you the options and the understanding so that you understand the world around you. And like I said at the top of my video, one of the things that groomers really, really rely on is ignorance. They don't want for you to know about sex. They don't want you to know that you can say no. They don't want for you to know that what they're doing is wrong. They don't want for you to be able to identify the feelings that you're having. Groomers look for an unattended child who is not being monitored, who is eager to find approval from an adult. And it's bizarre to me that people who say they don't want grooming to happen would genuinely have an issue with this. From the bit that I've read, this book very clearly states that sex is not something you should be doing until you're an adult. But here's the information you should have. There's something to be said about this idea that some people seem to have where sex is only something you should be discussing or understand the moment you turn 18. Because I'm sorry, even as a person who didn't go to a typical high school, people were having sex, right? People were having sex. People were having sex in middle school. The opportunities for sex appear a lot sooner than 18. Before I turned 18, I already had a very astute understanding that men wanted to have sex with me. I knew it. I didn't know what sex was, but I knew that men wanted it from me. And the very little bit that I read in this book, these are things that probably would have been like groundbreaking and life-changing to me if I read them when I was younger. When you keep children ignorant about this stuff, it is so much easier for them to take advantage of your ignorance, right? Are there illustrations of genitalia in this book? Yes, but there's really no graphic depictions of sex. Not that I've seen so far. Like, from what I've seen in this, they've got... You could maybe say that these people are having sex, maybe. But really, this is just a chapter about intimacy. They're not, like, showing full illustrations of an erect penis going into a vagina. I definitely think that this is a book that parents should take their kids through. I think having this particular conversation with your kids using this book is probably the best approach. This is another thing. I'm sorry, I'm gonna go off again. Do you know how fucked up it is for sex to be introduced to you as something that some person above you does to you? Someone who has power over you does to you? Like, it fundamentally shifts who you are and how sex comes into your life, right? Understanding that this is bad. This person trying to take advantage of you, and trying to get you to do this is bad. You can actually say no to that, understanding that, and then also understanding that sex can be something that you do pleasurably for love or not for love, maybe just enjoyment. That's something I had to learn. So many of my intimate partners suffered because I didn't know how to say that sex was a thing that I could say yes or no to. There were so many people who got caught in the crossfire of me not being able to say no. And that led to way more trauma, and cyclical situations that felt more familiar to me because they were traumatic, right? Anyway, what I'm trying to say is, if we're talking about grooming and you're worried about grooming and you're worried about this being the way that your children figure out sex or find out about sex, right? This is quite literally one of the best ways. One of the absolute best ways. A cute book with cute pictures. Not a man forcing himself on you. Not you being in the middle of something and realizing you don't want to do it, but continuing to do it because you feel like you have to. Like, sorry. There are worse ways. Anyway, those are my thoughts. I'm very curious what you guys have to say about this. So of course, give me your thoughts in the comment section below. I'm so curious for the parents in my audience. How do you guys talk about sex with your kids? Is that something that you feel comfortable doing? I understand why it's such a risque conversation for people to have. And I think a lot of people, self-included, never really had that conversation with our parents. And we had to learn about sex the way that we learned about sex. There were a lot of things that I had to figure out on my own, right? And I had to figure out on my own in a way that was honestly really traumatic, right? Anyway, would love to know what you guys think about this book. Let me know in the comment box below. I'll talk to you guys later, and I want you to always remember and to never forget that you are beautiful and you're loved. Bye.